where we're bringing you the insider details on a groundbreaking whistleblower case. This case has shed new light on the fact that the Hindu supremacist group Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, also known as the RSS, has been directly responsible for acts of terror against innocent people. It's no secret that the RSS has a long history of Hindu supremacist violence, also known as saffron terror. Most notably, a former member of the RSS, Nathuram Godse, was responsible for the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. But in 1992, RSS members were also involved in the demolition of the Babri Masjid, a 16th century mosque that was torn down by a Hindu supremacist mob who claimed that the land belonged to Hindus. In 2002, during the brutal Gujarat pogroms in which hundreds of Muslims were butchered by Hindu supremacists, RSS members and supporters tore babies out of their mothers' wombs, gang raped scores of women, beat Muslim families to death, and force-fed petrol to children and set them on fire. In 2017, an RSS leader openly boasted that Hindus had killed 2,000 Muslims in Gujarat's bloody violence. In the same speech, he offered a monetary reward to any Hindu who would, quote, cut off the head of the chief minister of Kerala state. In the Indian capital of New Delhi in February 2020, RSS supporters joined Hindu supremacist mobs who vandalized mosques, arsoned properties, live-streamed beatings, and lynched dozens of Muslims to death. Given the fact that the RSS was founded by admirers of Nazism and ethno-fascism in Europe, the extent of their crimes is unsurprising. What should shock and concern the international community is the fact that India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, also known as the BJP, is not only closely connected to the RSS, but also directly benefits from their hate-mongering and acts of violence. And this is the main topic of today's briefing. Just days ago, a former RSS worker moved an application before a special court of India's Central Bureau of Investigation, stating that the RSS and other Hindu supremacist leaders had planned and executed a series of bomb blasts in the early 2000s. He has also stated that Hindu extremists were taught how to carry out bomb attacks in a terror training camp. Just to reiterate, these terror attacks were carried out by some of the most prominent Hindu supremacist groups in India, some of which have branches in the United States, and all of which show a strong support for Narendra Modi. The implications of this testimony are groundbreaking. But before we get into the details about that, we want to share this week's India Genocide News update.
Amnesty International released a report saying the Indian government has drastically intensified the repression of rights in Jammu and Kashmir in the 3 years since its special constitutional status was revoked. Civil society and media in the region have been subjected to a vicious crackdown to stifle dissent using draconian laws. The Supreme Court's newly appointed Chief Justice U. Lalit dismissed 11 petitions seeking investigations and prosecutions in the role played by government agencies and Hindu supremacists who killed hundreds of Muslims during a massacre in 2002 in Gujarat state when Narendra Modi was its chief minister. A former member of the parliamentary Hindu supremacist group RSS submitted an affidavit in a court claiming the RSS carried out bombings across India to help Modi and his BJP win parliamentary elections in 2014. Yashwant Shinde told the court he had participated in bomb-making workshops and knew the bombers.
2006 साली झालेल्या बॉम्बस्फोट प्रकरणात मुळात जे आरोपी पकडले गेले आहेत ते मैदानातील आहेत. मूळ आरोपी त्यांनी प्लॅन रचला, गट रचला, ते अजून बाहेरच मोकळे फिरत आहेत.
The Hindu supremacist government in Assam state illegally demolished 3 Muslim-owned Islamic schools in August, claiming without evidence that they were involved in terrorist activities. The government, ruled by Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party, gave no notice nor sought a court order, but bulldozed the buildings.
तो ऐसा लग रहा है कि मदरसों के खिलाफ जिद है, मदरसे का नाम नहीं सुनना चाहते. गलत आदमी है, मैं बार-बार कह रहा हूँ आप लोग इसकी दिखाइए, ईमानदारी की दिखाइए.
The Supreme Court bailed globally renowned human rights defender Teesta Setalvad, who was arrested 2 months ago on the completely bogus charge of forging documents against Modi. Chief Justice U. Lalit said the alleged crime occurred 20 years ago and the police had had their chance for custodial interrogation. In a blatantly Islamophobic decision, Karnataka's state high court allowed Hindu festival celebrations on a land reserved for Muslim festivals for centuries. The court said the land belonged to the government and hence officials could use it in any way. The Vishwa Hindu Parishad, an extreme Hindu right-wing organization, called for a complete ban on religious conversion, in violation of the fundamental rights guaranteed in India's constitution. In 2018, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency had described the VHP as a militant religious organization. Hindu extremists vandalized a mosque and desecrated the Holy Quran in Kutch district of Gujarat after a Hindu milkman was stabbed to death. In Dewas district of Madhya Pradesh state, Hindu mobs vandalized another mosque to protest a Muslim man's marriage to a Hindu woman.
That was this week's India Genocide News. I'm going to move on now to our very first speaker. We're honored to have both of our speakers here today. We're starting out with Mr. Niranjan Takle, a renowned investigative journalist and author of the book, Who Killed Judge Loya? In 2017, Mr. Takle published a piece revealing the story behind the suspicious death of a judge who dared to try and hold powerful BJP leaders accountable before the law. We're very honored to have him here with us today. Mr. Takle, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And actually staying confined to today's subject, I would like to say that while working as an investigative journalist for a very renowned channel in India, that is CNN IPN, I happened to be first reporting and then investigating the first bomb blast that had happened in my district, in Nasik district in Malegaon. That was in 2006. Subsequently, in 2008, another blast, a series of blasts took place in the same Malegaon city. Malegaon is very peculiar because 80% of the population is Muslim population in that particular town, and the bombs were planted on bicycles in 2006, 4 bicycles. And the blasts happened in a mosque, in a qabristan, in a chowk near the mosque and at the entrance of the mosque. So in those blasts in 2006, 37 people got killed, including children, and more than 300 were injured. After that, the 2008 blasts happened. Both the blasts happened during the holy month of Ramadan. And in 2008, the government agency responsible for investigating it, which is anti-terrorism squad, was headed by Hemant Karkare, and he started investigating it. In fact, I was the first to report at that time, because in 2008 the bomb was planted on a motorcycle, and the motorcycle was registered in the name of one Pragya Singh Thakur. And then the investigation, in fact, began. And Pragya Singh Thakur was arrested, who had become Sadhvi Pragya Singh. In fact, coincidentally, nowadays Sadhvi Rutumbara is in the United States, and both of them were close associates back then. So Sadhvi Pragya Singh was the accused, who was arrested first, along with 2 of her colleagues. And later on, the investigation went on, in which Lieutenant Colonel Prasad Purohit, who was a serving army officer, then a retired army officer, Ramesh then Rakesh Dhavde was arrested. Then one self-proclaimed Shankaracharya, Swami Dayanand, he was arrested. And after that Shankaracharya's arrest, a huge evidence came forward, because this particular individual had a very peculiar habit of recording every conspiracy meeting on his laptop, and 34 videos of the conspiracy meetings that had happened among these conspirators at several places across India were recorded on his computer. And that was an incriminating evidence, because all these people were actually planning to fund such terror activities, how to make bombs, who will provide explosives. And Lieutenant Colonel Prasad Purohit had in fact volunteered in that particular meeting that he would do that. He had formed an organization called Abhinav Bharat. And so that entire evidence came forward. And all these accused who were arrested in the 2008 blasts were in fact charged with terrorism charges, and the case began. Right then, actually, when the attack on Mumbai happened, 26/11, and a main investigation officer, Hemant Karkare, who was heading the anti-terrorism squad, got killed in that particular incidents on 26/11. And after that, the entire further prosecution completely derailed. We all know that in 2014, the BJP government came to power, and very slowly, all these accused started getting released on the bail. And in fact, Lieutenant Colonel Prasad Purohit got reinstated in the army services. And Rakesh Dhavde, who was arrested, who was one of the main conspirators, was also released on bail, as other accused got on bail. Sadhvi Pragya Singh, whose motorcycle was used as a vehicle of terror in that particular bomb blast in 2008, later became member of parliament from Bhopal constituency from Madhya Pradesh. And now she is the member of parliament right now. So, and this is again a very peculiar way of the ruling party. They clearly want to send out a message that all such people, all such perpetrators, whether they are involved in bomb blasts or whether they are involved in lynchings, will get honored by the state. For example, Pragya Singh got honored. The accused charged of lynching number of Muslim men in India on account of eating or selling beef or carrying beef were lynched to death. And all those accused were, when they got released on the bail, they were welcomed by union ministers in India, and a clear message was sent out. Similarly, the recent incidents of the accused sentenced for life imprisonment in case of Bilkis Bano's rape and the murder of 14 members of her family, when they were remitted, the remission was given by the government. And when they were released from the jail on the 15th August 2022, they were welcomed by the same VHP leaders, Vishwa Hindu Parishad leaders. They were welcomed as if freedom fighters were coming out of the jail. And actually this happens because they want to spread fear. They want to convey this message to the masses that all such people involved in such terror activities will be appreciated and honored. And this actually spreads fear. So this fear mongering is going on for the last 8 years. And this is something which I had myself investigated during my course of 22 years of working as an investigative journalist. And now recently, Yashwant Shinde, who is also a participant in this particular congressional briefing, has on the 29th August, in fact, given an affidavit to the court, asking the court, requesting the court to make him a witness in all such cases. So I thank you, Ajit Bhai, thank you, Safa, for giving me an opportunity to present here briefly about what is happening in India.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Takle. Thank you for giving us that very important background as we transition to our next speaker, who is someone who has risked his own safety to come forth and tell the truth about the RSS's role in terror activities. Mr. Yashwant Shinde was an RSS worker for close to 25 years and also had associations with other Hindu supremacist groups like the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and the Bajrang Dal. 16 years after, he has broken his silence and is now speaking out about the terrorism of the RSS. In a recent interview, he told The Wire, an Indian publication, "I spent the past 16 years convincing every RSS leader to take action against those involved in the terror activities. No one paid heed to my pleas. So here I am before the court, willing to depose everything that I have known for so long." We are very honored to have Mr. Shinde here with us today to speak more about his groundbreaking affidavit and his experience with the RSS. He will be speaking in Hindi, but we will have our translator, Mr. Ajit Sahi, to interpret for him. Mr. Shinde, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
वैसे 2018 में जो ये मैं उसके पहले जाता हूँ, मैं आयु के 18 के वर्ष से विश्व हिंदू परिषद से जुड़ा और उसी से मेरा संघ परिवार से कार्य चालू हुआ उम्र के 18 से।
I have been associated with Vishwa Hindu Parishad from the age of 18, and that's how I connected with the RSS.
उस समय राम जन्मभूमि का आंदोलन चल रहा था, बहुत बड़े जोर से चल रहा था और कश्मीर वैली में, जम्मू कश्मीर में बड़े पैमाने पर हिंदुओं की हत्याएं हो रही थी और लाखों की तादाद में हिंदू विस्थापित हुए थे और राष्ट्रपति शासन था।
Yes, at that time, the Ram Janmabhoomi movement of Ayodhya was at its peak, and Hindus were being displaced, killed and displaced from Kashmir in large numbers.
तो वहां की खबरें उस समय तो ये बड़े पैमाने पर मीडिया था नहीं, अखबार टीवी के जरिए सारी खबरें आती थी और विश्व हिंदू परिषद के माध्यम से हमारे जैसे कार्यकर्ताओं को जानकारी मिलती थी कि वहां पर क्या हो रहा है जम्मू कश्मीर में।
So at that time, the mass media was not so expanded. We only got information through newspapers and television. And that is why for workers such as myself of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, we got our information through the sources in the Vishwa Hindu Parishad.
तो वहां का जो माहौल था उसके अनुसार मैंने अपना एक मन का प्रण किया कि जम्मू कश्मीर में जाकर दहशतवाद से लड़ाई लड़नी है। तो मैंने वैसे अपना मन बनाया और महाराष्ट्र प्रांत के संगठक विनायकराव देशपांडे इनसे बात की।
So at that time, I took a vow that I will go to Kashmir and fight terrorism. And that is why I spoke to one of the leaders of VHP in Maharashtra state.
तो उनसे बात करने के बाद उन्होंने काफी समय मुझे वर्ष कहा कि हाँ हम भेजेंगे, परंतु मुझे वहां पर भेजा नहीं। तो फिर मैंने स्वयं अपने बलबूते 1994-95 में जम्मू कश्मीर चला गया।
He kept saying to me, yes, we will send you to Kashmir, but they did not send me to Kashmir. So in 1994, I decided to go to Kashmir on my own, and I did so.
वहां पर जाने के बाद जो कश्मीर घाटी से जो विस्थापित हिंदू है उन परिवारों के पास में चला गया और वहां जाकर उन्हें मैंने बताया कि मैं मुंबई से आया हूं और मैं आप लोगों को मदद करना चाहता हूं। तो उन्हें लगा कि मैं कोई आर्थिक मदद देने वाला हूं, मुंबई से आया हूं। तो मैंने कहा आर्थिक नहीं, मैं शारीरिक रूप से मदद करने वाला हूं और दहशतवाद से हम लड़ेंगे, ऐसा उनको कहा।
So I went to Jammu and I met with Hindus who had been displaced from Kashmir, and I offered my services to them. I said, I have come from Maharashtra to help you. And they thought that maybe I am going to help them financially. And I said, no, I'm not going to help financially. I'm here to offer my physical labor in your service.
तो उन्होंने कहा कि हमें ऐसे जरूरत है नहीं, परंतु आपके जैसे युवाओं की जरूरत आरएसएस को, संघ को है। आप रघुनाथ बाजार में वीर भवन कार्यालय है, वहां पर जाकर उनसे संपर्क करिए।
So they said to me that instead of, we don't really need your physical labor, but the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, needs your labor. So why don't you go to Raghunath Bazar and meet with the functionaries of the RSS at the office there?
वहां पर जाने के बाद मुझे मुरली जी करके वहां पर मिले, जो मूलतः महाराष्ट्र के थे। तो उनसे भेंट करने के बाद उनसे मेरी बातचीत हुई काफी। उन्होंने मुझे टटोला मैं उचित हूँ अनुचित हूँ, ताकि दहशतवादियों का माहौल था। फिर उन्होंने मुझे देखा कि मैं ठीक हूँ, तो मुझे इंदिरा जी से भेंट करा की।
So at that time, I met with someone. क्या नाम बताया यशवंत जी जिनसे मिले आप?
Murli, Murli.
मुरली जी।
So yes, so at that time I went to the office of the RSS and I met with Murli, and he checked me out to see what my credentials were, because that was the time of terrorism in Kashmir.
तो मुझे मुरली जी ने इंदिरा जी से भेंट करा की थी। इंदिरा जी उस समय हिमगिरी प्रांत प्रचारक यानी हिमाचल और जम्मू कश्मीर के प्रांत प्रचारक थे।
So I was then introduced to Indresh Kumar, who was then the pracharak, or the official of the RSS for the mountainous regions of Himachal Pradesh and northwards Jammu and Kashmir.
उनसे भेंट होने के बाद उनसे भी मेरी काफी दीर्घ बातचीत हुई, और फिर उन्होंने मुझे 7 दिन का ITC करवाया, और पठानकोट में, पंजाब का पठानकोट है, वहां पर मेरा प्राथमिक शिक्षा होने के बाद एक प्राथमिक शिक्षा वर्ग हुआ, और मुझे राजौरी जिला जो पाकिस्तान के सीमा पर है, वहां पर मुझे जवाहर नगर और राजौरी नगर का मुझे विस्तारक के रूप में मुझे घोषणा की।
So then I was put through a 1-week training course, and then I was appointed. I was sent to Rajouri district, which borders Pakistan, and I was stationed there as an RSS functionary.
मैंने इंदिरा जी से मिलने के उपरांत स्पष्ट रूप से कहा था कि मुझे ऐसे जगह पर भेजिए जहां पे दहशतवादियों के साथ लड़ाई कर सकूं।
I asked Indresh, please send me to a place where I can fight the terrorists.
एक वर्ष मैं राजौरी में रहा, तो उस समय डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला जो चीफ मिनिस्टर जम्मू कश्मीर के थे, तो उनका वहां पर प्रवास हुआ। 9 दिसंबर 1995 में उनका राजौरी में आना हुआ।
So when I was there at Rajouri, the then Chief Minister of Jammu Kashmir, Farooq Abdullah, he came to Rajouri on 9th December 1995.
जम्मू कश्मीर में उस समय राष्ट्रपति शासन था, और केंद्र में कांग्रेस की नरसिंह राव की सरकार थी, और उन्होंने जम्मू कश्मीर में कई साल चुनाव हुए नहीं थे, तो चुनाव का माहौल बनाने के लिए उन्हें प्रायोजित रूप से वहां पर प्रचार के लिए भेजा था।
At that time, Jammu Kashmir was being directly ruled by India's federal government under president rule, and elections had not been held in that region for many years. So at that time, Dr. Farooq Abdullah, the former Chief Minister of Kashmir, had visited Rajouri in order to build up support and create circumstances favorable to holding the election.
राजौरी में जब डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला इनका भाषण हुआ, और भाषण के उपरांत उन्होंने कहा कि जिन्हें मुझसे बात करनी है वो मुझसे आके बात कर सकते हैं, तो उस रूप से मैं उनसे मिलने चला गया। उनको उसी पहाड़ी इलाकों से एक 25-30 लोग मिलने को आए थे, उनके साथ मैं भी था।
So in his speech, Farooq Abdullah, the former chief minister, said, if you want to talk to me, come and meet me. So I decided to go and meet with him. Along with me, there were about 20-25 other people from the region who had gone across to meet with him.
वहां पर हम मैदान में ही डाक बंगले में नीचे जमीन पर बैठे सारे लोग। वहां पर बैठने के बाद उस पहाड़ी क्षेत्र से आए एक व्यक्ति ने, डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला, उनसे कहा कि हमें जम्मू कश्मीर अलग कैसे मिलेगा। तो फारूक अब्दुल्ला ने कहा कि कुछ वर्षों में, कुछ समय के बाद हमें जम्मू कश्मीर अलग करके मिलने वाला है। तो दिल्ली के जो नेता लोग हैं, केंद्र के लोग हैं, उन्हें कोई उनकी देश की पड़ी नहीं है, मौज मस्ती और अय्याशी में मस्त है, तो आने वाले समय में हमें जम्मू कश्मीर अलग करके मिलने वाला है।
So one of the people who had come to meet with Farooq Abdullah asked him, how are we going to get Jammu Kashmir separated from India? Alag matlab ki India se alag karna, right?
इंडिया से अलग,
Yes.
अलग
So
देश।
one of the people who came there asked him, how can we secede Jammu Kashmir from India? And Farooq Abdullah replied that don't worry, eventually that will happen, because the officials in Delhi, which is India's capital, are just not paying attention. They're involved in their own shenanigans, and therefore this will happen eventually.
तो डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला के ऐसा कहने पर एक व्यक्ति ने तुरंत कहा कि हम ऐसे आपके बाप दादा से सुनते आ रहे हैं, हम आप पर कैसे विश्वास करेंगे कि आने वाले समय में जम्मू कश्मीर हमें अलग करके मिलेगा।
So another person immediately said, well, we've heard this from our grandfather's time that Jammu and Kashmir will be separated from India, but that has not happened. Why should we believe you?
ऐसा सुनते ही डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला ने अपनी मुष्टि जमीन पर पटक के बोला कि अगर ऐसा हुआ तो आने वाले में अगर हमें अलग करके नहीं मिला भारत से जम्मू कश्मीर, तो आप यहाँ पर जैसे कश्मीर वैली में हथियार उठाकर हिंदुओं को भगाया है, उसी प्रकार यहाँ पर भी हथियार उठा के हिंदुओं को भगाओ।
You're muted.
हिंदुओं को भगाओ या मुसलमानों को भगाओ, क्या बोला उन्होंने, फिर से बताइएगा।
नहीं, जम्मू से हिंदुओं को भगाओ।
हाँ हाँ, एक सेकंड सुन लेते हैं। हाँ, तो अच्छा, उन्होंने हिंदुओं को भगाओ, ठीक है। At that time, when that person questioned Farooq Abdullah, he banged his fist on the ground and he said, well, in that case, just as you picked up arms and forced Hindus out of Kashmir, you need to pick up arms and force Hindus out of Jammu.
तो उसके उपरांत हम लोग उठते मैंने फिर डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला को पकड़ा और प्रसाद दे दिया जो देना था। जिस प्रकार से डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला उनको उकसा रहे थे मुसलमानों को, वहां के स्थानिक जो थे, वो गलत था। तो इसलिए मैंने उनके साथ छटापटी हुई, पुलिस ने मुझे अरेस्ट किया। मैं 4 महीना पब्लिक सेफ्टी एक्ट लगाया, मैं जेल में था, जम्मू सेंट्रल जेल में। और फिर 4 महीने के बाद मैं बाहर आया और 4 साल हमारा केस चला और 4 साल के बाद मैं छूट गया।
So at that time, when I heard this, I protested and I gave my talking points. I used my talking points with Dr. Abdullah. I gave him the material, the RSS material. And therefore, this created a bit of a conflict. And I was arrested right then. And I was charged under the Public Safety Act, PSA. And I was sent to prison. I was in prison for 4 months before I was released. And then the case against me lasted for 4 years before I was acquitted.
1995 में के बाद 1996 में मेरा संघ का द्वितीय वर्ष हुआ चंडीगढ़ में, और चंडीगढ़ के यहाँ पर मेरी प्रचारक रूप में घोषणा हुई, माननीय इंदिरा जी ने की और मुझे उधमपुर जिले में भेजा।
So in 1996, I was announced as the Pracharak, RSS Pracharak for Udhampur district. And this was announced by Indiresh Kumar.
फिर वहां पर मैं 1 वर्ष काम कर रहा था और वहां पर संगठनात्मक जो मुझे अनुभव आया वो बहुत ही गलत आई, क्योंकि हम अपना समय, ऊर्जा जो समाज के लिए, देश के लिए लगा रहे, इसका इस्तेमाल भाजपा के गलत लोगों को हो रहा था। तो ये देख के मेरा मन उड़ गया संगठन के काम के ऊपर से।
I spent a year working for the RSS in Udhampur. And I was not very happy because I realized that instead of doing positive work with positive energy, we were working for the benefit of the wrong people in the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is the political party connected with the RSS.
उसके बाद मैंने पीछे हटने का निर्णय लिया और इंदिरा जी ये चाहते नहीं थे, लेकिन उन्होंने मेरी उसके अगले साल राजौरी जिले के लिए मेरी नियुक्ति की थी, परंतु मैंने वहां जाने से मना किया और मैं इंदिरा जी के साथ ही काफी जगह प्रवास रहते थे और उसके बाद मेरा मुंबई आना हुआ।
After a year, I decided to step back from RSS activities because I was not happy with the way they were going. I was persuaded by Indiresh Kumar to go with him and go back to Jammu after a year.
1997-98 में मुंबई आया, वापिस में जम्मू गया और सितंबर महीने 1998 में मैं सिद्धू दर्शन के लिए मेरा प्रवास हुआ। उस समय मेरे साथ श्रीकांत जोशी जी जो केंद्रीय आरएसएस के कार्यकारिणी में थे और इंदिरा जी और हेरंब कोलटकर, ऐसे 4 लोग हम सिद्धू दर्शन के लिए लद्दाख जाने के लिए निकले।
In 1998, in the month of September, 4 of us left for a religious pilgrimage to Ladakh in the Kashmir region. And along with me was Indiresh Kumar, and there were 2 other people. Zara dobara naam bataiega, unka naam?
श्रीकांत जोशी जी.
Shrikant
Shrikant
Joshi
Joshi.
was also part of
Shrikant
the
Joshi
group.
was the propaganda in charge of RSS.
Shrikant Joshi was also with me. He was the propaganda in charge of the RSS and part of the national committee of the RSS. So 4 of us left Mumbai to go to Ladakh for a pilgrimage in September 1998.
जब हम प्रवास में गए तो लद्दाख शुरू होने के पहले सोनमर्ग में हम रुके थे. तो वहां पर सेना के कुछ वरिष्ठ अधिकारी जवान थे. तो उनसे कुछ इंद्रेश जी की बातचीत हुई. तो सेना के जवान और अधिकारी उस समय बोल रहे थे कि पाकिस्तान ने वहां की बड़ी जो टॉप पर बैठ के कब्जा किया है भारत की, और वो टारगेट राष्ट्रीय हवाई मार्ग को कर रहे रोड को. तो आप दिन को प्रवास मत करिए, रात को मिलिट्री की सुरक्षा में आप वहां से निकलिए.
So when we were there, we met with some officials and soldiers of the Indian Army, and they told us that our Pakistan Army had occupied some positions, some high positions, and they were targeting the national highway, India's national highway, and therefore they advised us not to travel in the night, not to travel on that national highway, and they said they will provide us with a military escort to take that route.
वास्तव में ये विषय जुड़ा है कारगिल वॉर से जुड़ा हुआ है, क्योंकि जिस समय सितंबर महीने 98 में जब हम वहां पर द्रास ले कारगिल गए थे, तो उसी समय कश्मीर की लद्दाख की जो सीमाएं थी 250 किलोमीटर और एलओसी क्रॉस करके 25-25 किलोमीटर अंदर लगभग 500 चौरस किलोमीटर एरिया पाकिस्तान ने कब्जे में लिया था घुसपैठियों ने.
At that time, Pakistan had occupied a large part of the Indian territory, something like 500 square kilometers, and they had trespassed about 25 kilometers deep into the Indian territory. This was the time when the Kargil war was happening or about to happen.
इतनी बड़ी घुसपैठी हमारे भारत के भूमि में हुई और हमने उस समय उनको वहां पर घुसने दिया. वास्तव में उस समय केंद्र में अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी की सरकार थी. अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी पंतप्रधान थे.
And this had happened at a time when the national government was led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was a BJP leader. He was the prime minister at the time.
और 98 सितंबर में घुसपैठी हुई थी, ये हमने आंखों से देखा. और 8-9 महीने के बाद ऑपरेशन विजय घोषित करके जंग लड़ी गई. लेकिन 8-9 महीने पहले अगर ये रोका जाता तो जंग होती ही नहीं. उनको वहां पर जगह बनाने को मौका हमारे लोगों ने ही दिया.
It took about 8 to 9 months to defeat and push back the Pakistani trespass and the Pakistani incursion, and then declared victory. But had care been taken 8-9 months ago, then they could not have encroached upon Indian territory, and there would not have been any need for war.
जब ऑपरेशन विजय घोषित किया तो 1999 का वर्ष शुरू हुआ था, और 1999 में भारत में लोकसभा के चुनाव होने वाले थे. तो कारगिल वॉर 1999 के लोकसभा जीतने के लिए अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी ने प्रायोजित षड्यंत्र करके रचे गए थे.
In 1999, when the Kargil war ended, at that point in time, the elections to India's federal parliament were about to be held. This war in Kargil of Kashmir was deliberately engineered in a sponsored way by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee of the BJP in order to win the election.
एक साधारण सी बात है कि भारत की सीमा में पाकिस्तान ने घुसखोरी की है. पाकिस्तान के साथ सीधा लड़ाई नहीं थी, घुसपैठी के साथ थी. तो घुसपैठी होने का कारण क्या कि भारत के साथ तो जीत नहीं सकता था पाकिस्तान. तो सीधी सी बात थी कि 99 की लोकसभा को टारगेट रखकर सामने रखकर ये जंग लड़ा गया और पाकिस्तान में नवाज शरीफ उनको भी इसका लाभ उठाना था। तो ये प्लानिंग से ये कारगिल युद्ध लड़ा गया। इसमें अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी शामिल है इस षड्यंत्र में।
Atal Bihari Vajpayee was part of this conspiracy to ensure that there was a war with the Pakistani army so that it could benefit him and his government politically. And of course, this war also benefited politically the Pakistani government of the time, because that was also helped by the tensions. यशवंत भाई, आप थोड़ा सा आगे चल के, क्योंकि टाइम का भी अंदाजा हमें रखना है, हमारे ऑडियंस जो है वो 15-20 मिनट और रहेंगे हमारे साथ, तो थोड़ा आगे चल के अगर आपने एफिडेविट दिया है उसके ऊपर नजर डालें थोड़ा सा आपसे।
हाँ, तो अगर एफिडेविट पे हम नजर डालते हैं तो हम 2003 की बात करते हैं, जहां पर 2003 में मैं मुंबई में था। तो मेरे सामने मिलिंद परांडे के 2 नजदीक व्यक्ति थे, उनका प्रस्ताव मेरे पास आया। उनका प्रस्ताव आया कि हमें बम बनाने के प्रशिक्षण लेना है और उसके ऊपर काम करने हैं। तो मेरे पास जब प्रस्ताव आया तो मैंने तुरंत बोला कि 2004 की लोकसभा अभी आने वाले हैं, तो इसलिए ये प्रशिक्षण लेके देश में बमकांड करके लोगों को मारना ऐसा है क्या आप लोगों का? ऐसा मैंने उनको जवाब दिया। तो इतना बोलते वो निरुत्तर हो गए।
In 2003, when I was in Mumbai, 2 people from the RSS, one of them was named Milind Parand. They came to me and they said that we have to train people to carry out bombings. And so I immediately asked them that this is 2003, and next year in 2004, the India's federal elections are scheduled. Is this your plan? Do you aim to influence the outcome of the elections by carrying out the bombings?
मैंने तुरंत बोला उनको तो कि भाई इसके लिए आप सब कर रहे हैं क्या? भाजपा को फायदा होने के लिए आप बमकांड करने वाले हो? तो सामने से चुप बैठे, कोई जवाब नहीं। लेकिन फिर मैंने सोचा कि इसके अंदर जाएंगे तो और कुछ जानकारी काफी मिलेगी। तो फिर मैं सिंहगढ़ पुणे में जो सिंहगढ़ है उसके तलाटी में एक रिसोर्ट में बम बनाने का प्रशिक्षण हुआ।
I asked them, but if they want to influence the elections and bring an electoral dividend to the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, but they did not say anything. So I decided to join with them, and then I traveled to the city of Pune near Mumbai in Maharashtra, and I participated. I participated in a bomb making workshop that was organized by these people.
वहां पे जब रिसोर्ट पे हम गए तो हमारी व्यवस्था के लिए राकेश धावड़े हमारी व्यवस्था में वहां पर था। हमारे खान पान का व्यवस्था, रहने का सारा व्यवस्था राकेश धावड़े कर रहा था। राकेश धावड़े जो मालेगांव के बम कांड में आरोपी है।
When we were there in Pune, our main host was Rakesh Thavre, and he was responsible for our stay, for our food, everything. And he is the man who was an accused, one of the key accused in the bombings in the city of Malegaon that occurred in 2006, 2 years later.
राकेश धावड़े, हम 3-4 दिन उस प्रशिक्षण में थे। उस समय राकेश धावड़े बाइक से मिथुन चक्रवर्ती नाम के व्यक्ति को हमारे रिसोर्ट में लाते था, जो हमें बम बनाने का ट्रेनिंग देता था, और उसको लेके जाने का काम भी राकेश धावड़े करता था।
For about 3 to 4 days, we were there in that bomb-making training workshop organized by the RSS. And every day, Rakesh Thavre would bring a man named Mithun Chakrabarti on his motorcycle. It was Mithun Chakrabarti who trained us in making bombs at that workshop.
वास्तविक मिथुन चक्रवर्ती जो बम बनाने का प्रशिक्षण देता था, उसका असली नाम रविदेव था, और वह उस समय अखिल भारतीय बजरंग दल का सहसंयोजक था।
दोबारा बताइएगा जरा, थोड़ा कंफ्यूजिंग है, दोबारा बताइए।
मिथुन चक्रवर्ती नाम का जो व्यक्ति बम बनाने का जो प्रशिक्षण देने को आता था, उसका असली नाम रविदेव था, और वह उस समय अखिल भारतीय बजरंग दल का सहसंयोजक था।
The actual name of Mithun Chakrabarti was Arjun Dev.
Ravi Dev.
Ravi Dev. His name was Ravi Dev, And at that time, he was the coordinator of the Bajrang Dal, which is an offshoot of the RSS.
वहां का प्रशिक्षण 2-3-4 दिन बाद होने के बाद राकेश धावड़े ने एक दिन शाम को जाने के वहां से पहले हम सबको कागज पेन दिया और बताया कि आप इस कागज पे सभी लोग लिख के दो कि अभी आपने जो प्रशिक्षण लिया है तो आप ये कहाँ पर काम करेंगे, कांड वो लिखित में दो.
After the workshop ended, Rakesh Dhavre gave each one of us pen and paper and asked each one of us to write down where and how are we going to use the new skill of bomb making that we had learned at the workshop.
इसके ऐसे बोलने पर मैंने वो स्पष्ट मनाही की और लिखने से मना किया कि हम ये काम लिखित में कैसे दे सकते हैं. तो फिर सभी युवक जो महाराष्ट्र के कई जिलों से आए थे, उसमें हिमांशु पानसे भी था और कई लोग थे जो नांदेड़ के बम ब्लास्ट में मारे गए. ऐसे कई लोग थे, सभी ने मना किया और फिर उसके कारण उसको गुस्सा आया.
But I refused to put anything in writing, saying that how can we put down anything in writing about how are we going to use the bomb making skills and what are the places we are going to bomb. Once I refused to do that, the other men also, young men who were part of the workshop, they also refused, including Hemant Pansare and several others. Some of those who participated, who joined that workshop, were people who were later killed in the Nanded bomb blast, in a bomb blast in the Nanded district of Maharashtra state.
दूसरे दिन हम जब वहां से निकल रहे थे तो फिर उसने, राकेश धावड़े ने मुझे बाइक पर बैठा था और हम 4-व्हीलर में बैठे थे, तो मुझे बताया कि अभी संभल के जाओ. ऐसे मुझे जान से मारने की धमकी दी थी उसने. तो मैंने तुरंत उसको बताया कि तुम लोग बाइक से जा रहे हो, तुम लोग संभल के जाओ.
You're on mute.
Next day, Rakesh Dhavre tried to threaten me and he said, be careful. And I told him, because he was on a motorcycle, I said, you be careful. We are in a 4-wheeler. You are on a motorcycle. Be careful. Basically, Rakesh Dhavre was upset with me because I had refused to put it in writing.
उसके बाद वहां से जाने के बाद मैंने हिमांशु पानसे को नांदेड़ जाके कई बार समझाया और हिमांशु पानसे जो नांदेड़ बम ब्लास्ट में मारा गया, वो मुंबई में आता था, तो उस समय उसको काफी समझाया कि यह साजिश रची जा रही है विश्व परिषद के जरिए कि भाजपा को जिताने की 2004 की लोकसभा के लिए.
After that, I met Himanshu Panse several times and I explained to him and I tried to tell him not to get into this work. And I told, even when he visited me in Mumbai, every time I met, I told him, do not do this because this is a conspiracy to bring electoral rewards for the BJP. Don't get involved in this planned bombings.
वास्तव में जो ट्रेनिंग का जो विषय निकला बम सिखाने का, ये सारी योजना मिलिंद पारांडे, जो आज विश्व हिंदू परिषद का राष्ट्रीय संगठक है, उसने बनाई थी भाजपा से सुपारी लेकर.
The entire planning for carrying out bombings across India was actually the mastermind of this project was Milind Paramte, who is now the national Sangatak. Sangatak ko kya bolenge? Coordinator?
Coordinator.
He is the national coordinator for the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. He had taken a contract from the BJP to carry out the bombings.
मैंने अंदर जाने के कारण मुझे कई नाम पता चले, कौन है, क्या है, साजिश क्या होने वाली है. मेरे पास मिलिंद पारांडे ने यह विषय रखने का एक ही कारण था कि मेरा बहुत बड़ा दायरा था, कई राज्यों में मेरे संपर्क थे. अगर मैं ये विषय में हाँ भरता और काम करता तो देश में सैकड़ों बम ब्लास्ट होते. उसको ध्यान में रखकर ही मुझे इस प्लान में लिया गया था.
Milind Paramte was keen to involve me in this plan to carry out bombings across India because I had deep networks and relationships across the country. Had I agreed to join this plan, there would have been hundreds of bombings across India, and that is the reason they were very keen that I continue to be part of it.
मैंने इस प्रस्ताव को, उनके जो प्लानिंग थी, योजना, षड्यंत्र था, उसको मैंने चौपट किया, होने नहीं दिया और कई लोगों को सतर्क किया. इस कारण क्या हुआ, जैसे कलकत्ता के तपन जी घोष जो ज्येष्ठ थे और उनका भी बहुत बड़ा दायरा था, प्रमोद मुतालिक, श्रीराम सेना कर्नाटक, आसाम में विश्व हिंदू रक्षा समिति, ऐसे कई संगठनों को मैं अगर चाहता तो देश भर में बहुत बड़ा कांड होते और हजारों लोग मारे जाते.
If I had wanted, I could have involved many organizations, such as one in Assam, another in Karnataka, the Shri Ram Sena of Pramod Mutalik, and the third, तीसरा कहाँ था? तीसरा?
तपन घोष.
Yes. And all of these organizations, because I was connected to them, I could have used them, and there would have been a lot of bombings across India.
अब इनका मैंने प्लान चौपट कर किया, इस कारण ये लोग कमजोर हो गए, तो इनके हाथ से कुछ घटनाएं हो सकी. अब हिमांशु ने कुछ जगह पर काम किए, जैसे जालना, पूर्णा और परभनी, ऐसे जगह पर कुछ घटनाएं की. और नांदेड़ के यहाँ पर
बोल देता हूँ नहीं तो भूल जाऊंगा मैं. So in 3 places, Jalsa, Purna and Jalna, Purna
और परभनी
and Parbhani. In 3 places, Jalna, Purna and Parbhani, Himanshu Panse could carry out the bombings. The bombings could not be as many as they would have been had I been involved, but they could still carry out the bombings in some places, and these are among the places where they could do so, and Himanshu Panse was involved in it.
फिर औरंगाबाद में उनको करना था, परंतु नांदेड़ में बम बनाते समय वहीं पर ब्लास्ट हुआ और हिमांशु पानसे और नरेश कोंडावार वही जगह पर ही मारे गए और उनका वो प्लानिंग वहां औरंगाबाद करने का खत्म हो गया.
They also wanted to bomb places in Aurangabad city in Maharashtra. But before that, in the Nanded city, Himanshu Panse and another man, both of them died while they were making bombs, and therefore that they could not carry out the bombings in Aurangabad city.
और उसके बाद ये प्रशिक्षण काफी जगह पर दिया गया था, काफी लोगों को दिया गया था. इसका प्रमाण एक है कि राकेश धावड़े मालेगांव से कांड से संबंधित था, प्रज्ञा सिंह गुट से जो भोपाल से भाजपा की सांसद है. तो इसी प्रकार हैदराबाद, अजमेर शरीफ, मालेगांव और समझौता एक्सप्रेस, ऐसे कई जगह पर इन्होंने कांड किए. लेकिन मनमोहन सिंह की कांग्रेस की 10 वर्षीय सरकार थी, इस कारण कई लोग अंडरग्राउंड हुए, कुछ मारे गए, कुछ पकड़े गए.
These people, such workshops to train people in making bombs were held across the country at many places. As a result of which, there were a series of blasts, for example, in Hyderabad, in Malegaon, in the Samjhauta Express, which is a train between India and Pakistan, which used to be a train going back and forth between India and Pakistan. And people like Sadhvi Pragya, who is now a member of parliament from the BJP, and Rakesh Dhavle himself, they were all involved in these bombings. But because for 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, India was ruled by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who was from the Congress party. And therefore, many of these people, either they were arrested and the rest of them went underground.
अब कई जगह पर करके सब माहौल उनका कमजोर पड़ गए और कांग्रेस सरकार थी, वो चली जाने के बाद 2014 से जो मेन प्लानर थे वो वापस उसी कार्य में शरीक हो गए.
After 2014, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's government was defeated at the elections and Narendra Modi became Prime Minister, these people came back and they got active once again in the same work of bomb making.
जहां पर बम कांड हुए वहां पर मैदान के खिलाड़ियों को पकड़ा, जो ब्रेन थे उनको पकड़ा ही नहीं. तपास यंत्रणाओं ने गड़बड़ की है. अगर तपास यंत्रणा ठीक से ढंग से अगर इंक्वायरी करती तो ब्रेन जो मिलिंद परांडे और भाजपा के संघ के कौन कौन इन्वॉल्व है वो सारे पकड़े जाते, परंतु तपास यंत्रणा ने गड़बड़ी की.
किसने गड़बड़ी की? तपास
इन्वेस्टिगेटिव एजेंसीज,
इंक्वायरी एजेंसियां,
investigating agencies.
Okay. The masterminds of these bombings were Milind Parandpe and other people from the RSS and the BJP. But the investigative agencies never arrested them. They only arrested the foot soldiers. Had they arrested the masterminds, and the big officials of the RSS, BJP, BHP who were coordinating and leading these bombings, then the truth would have come out.
2003, 4, 5, 6 उस समय भाजपा कमजोर थी सरकार की दृष्टि से, परंतु 2014 में बड़े सक्षम रूप से आगे आने के बाद इनकी पॉलिसी चेंज हो गई। उस समय पीछे बमकांड करके माहौल खराब करके फायदा उठाना ये दिमाग में था, परंतु सत्ता मजबूती आने के बाद इनकी पॉलिसी चेंज हुई है।
From 2003 to 2006, the BJP was not very strong. It was weak politically. And that was the period when they were trying to carry out the bombings. But in 2014, the BJP came to power at the federal level. And at that time, once they got power and they got strong, they changed their policy.
अब उन्होंने पॉलिसी क्या बनाई है कि तबलीगी ने भारत पर कोरोना लाया करके टारगेट किया और मुसलमानों के विरोध में द्वेष फैलाया बड़े पैमाने पर भारत में कोरोना के काल में। एनआरसी के मुद्दे पर मुसलमानों के विरोध में द्वेष फैलाया, हिजाब के मैटर में द्वेष फैलाया, पश्चिम बंगाल में ममता हिंदुओं पर अत्याचार कर रही है, ऐसे विषय लेकर इन लोगों ने देश में मुसलमानों के खिलाफ जहर उगाला इतना जहर की बहुत भयावह परिस्थिति है ऐसी देखा जाए तो। और दूसरा, अभी 3 महीने पहले कश्मीर में हिंदुओं को चुन के मारा।
After 2014, they changed their policy. They started attacking Muslims by blaming them for different things in India, such as they blamed Muslims for bringing the the coronavirus to India, spread. The RSS BJP also brought the NRC, the National Register for Citizens, and they have deployed many other means to publicly discredit or attack Muslims and to create hatred from them across India. And recently in Kashmir, there has been an increase in the number of killings of Hindus. या आप कश्मीर के हिंदुओं की किलिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, इसका क्या मतलब क्या कह रहे हैं आप?
उसके ऊपर मुझे कहना है कि अभी नुपुर शर्मा को उन्होंने आगे किया, जो भाजपा की राष्ट्रीय प्रवक्ता थी। 2.5-3 महीने पहले कश्मीर में काफी हिंदुओं को चुन के मारा, इस कारण हजारों लोग विस्थापित हुए। अगर वह खबर अखबारों में मीडिया में छाई रहती तो केंद्र सरकार को नुकसान पहुंचता। तो इसीलिए नुपुर शर्मा को आगे करके इन लोगों ने प्रेषित मोहम्मद पैगंबर इनका विषय उछाला और इस विषय को दबाया ताकि सरकार का चेहरा बचाया जा सके। इसलिए प्रेषित मोहम्मद पैगंबर को नाम को उछाल के बदनाम करके माहौल को एकदम खराब करके उस विषय को ढक दिया।
Right. So what happened was that in recent few months there were mass killings of Hindus, and they were also sent out. Hindus were forced out of Kashmir, and this was a failure of the Modi government. But to deflect attention from this failure, they put forward their own spokesperson Nupur Sharma, who then defamed, who abused Prophet Muhammad of Islam, and that is how they try to turn the attention away. Yashwant ji, अभी चूंकि टाइम हमारा खत्म हो रहा है, मैं चाहूंगा हमारे जो निरंजन भाई हैं वो आपसे थोड़े सवाल जवाब करें इस केस को लेकर। निरंजन भाई, go ahead. Niranjan bhai, will you also please translate while you are talking to Yashwant bhai? All right.
Sure. यशवंत जी, एक सबसे पहला सवाल, क्योंकि मैं पत्रकार रहा हूं तो पत्रकार की नजर से पहले आपको सवाल करूंगा कि ये जो आपने अभी कोर्ट में एफिडेविट दिया है 2022 29 अगस्त को, तो वो अभी क्यों दिया? क्योंकि आप बात तो 15-20 साल की कर रहे हो, 2014 तक आपने सब कुछ देखा है, तो 2014 के पहले जब मालेगांव ब्लास्ट हो गए या समझौता के ब्लास्ट हुए थे, अजमेर शरीफ के हुए थे, असीमानंद का कन्फेशन आया था, तो उस वक्त आपने ये आपका एफिडेविट क्यों नहीं दिया? आज ही क्यों दिया? आज ऐसा क्या हुआ कि आपको लगा कि आज देना चाहिए?
Niranjan bhai, I'll just quickly translate for our audience. So the question asked from Niranjan Takle, the journalist, is that this information that Mr. Shinde has shared with the court in an affidavit pertains to 2003, 2004, 5, 6, and there were at the time of when the bombings were happening, there were confessions from one of the Hindu leaders, Asimanand, more than 10 years ago. So the question is, why did you not give an affidavit at that time? What is the reason? Why are you giving an affidavit now?
मैं चुप नहीं बैठा था, मैं संगठन के अंदर से काम कर रहा था कि माननीय श्रीकांत जोशी जी जो 2012-13 में गुजर गए, उनके जरिए मैं काफी प्रयास किया। श्रीकांत जोशी जी इन्होंने मोहन भागवत से भी कई बार बातें की, लेकिन मोहन भागवत ने घास नहीं डाली।
अच्छा, तो अभी आपने दिया आपने
निरंजन भाई, you can translate.
So what he is saying is that I mean he was not keeping silent during all this while. He was first trying to insist with Venkatesh Abdev, who is the in charge of VHP in Mumbai. Also with Shrikant Joshi, who was earlier the propaganda in charge of RSS, and now he sits in the central office of RSS in Delhi with them. And he was repeatedly asking them that why such things are happening, why such things were happened, and why you are keeping silent, why are you trying to do such activities which benefit BJP politically. So I repeatedly kept on following up with them, but nothing happened. I mean, they didn't do anything. They even spoke to Shrikant Joshi, even spoke to Mohan Bhagwat, but he also didn't do anything about it.
Niranjan bhai, you can ask 2 more questions because then.
Yeah, one more question is now आपने मेंशन किया मिथुन चक्रवर्ती का 2008 की मालेगांव ब्लास्ट की जो चार्जशीट है उसको अगर हम देखेंगे तो उसमें मिथुन चक्रवर्ती नाम से प्रसाद पुरोहित काम कर रहे थे, ऐसा उसमें से समझ में आता है। ऑफ कोर्स आपने बाकी जो नाम दिए राकेश धावड़े वगैरह वो सब अरेस्ट हो गए, तो उनके काफी फोटोग्राफ्स भी बाद में आए। तो क्या प्रसाद पुरोहित और मिथुन चक्रवर्ती और रविदेव एक ही है?
नहीं, मिथुन चक्रवर्ती अलग है और पुरोहित अलग है, ये 101% सच है।
ओके, तो क्या आप मिले थे पुरोहित से कभी या प्रज्ञा सिंह ठाकुर?
पुरोहित से नहीं, प्रज्ञा सिंह ठाकुर को मैंने सेशन कोर्ट में जब तारीख होती थी तो उस समय में हिमानी सावरकर और इनके संपर्क में था, तो उस समय में जाता था। तो
निरंजन भाई प्लीज,
प्रज्ञा की बहन, प्रज्ञा सिंह की बहन जो प्रतिभा झा जो सूरत में रहती है, तो उसका रहने का व्यवस्था भी पहली बार मैंने किया था मुंबई में।
Okay, he says that Lieutenant Colonel Prasad Purohit and Ravi Dev are 2 different persons. The name used under disguise of Mithun Chakravarti was the same. Secondly, what he's saying is that he used to meet Pragya Singh many times whenever the court trial used to happen in the session court in Mumbai. In fact, he used to make arrangements for Pragya Singh's sister whenever she used to be in Pratibha, whenever she was in Mumbai, for her staying arrangements and other arrangements. तीसरा जो है ये जो पूरा नेटवर्क आप बता रहे थे, आपको भी शायद मालूम होगा 2006 के ब्लास्ट में रामजी कलसंगरा और ये और एक नाम था रामजी कलसंगरा, सुनील जोशी, इन लोगों के जो नाम आए थे, तो सुनील जोशी की तो बाद में हत्या हुई, तो क्योंकि पता नहीं उनको डर था सुनील जोशी से या क्या, तो क्या ये जानते हुए आपको डर नहीं लग रहा है कि आपकी जान को भी खतरा हो सकता है?
नहीं, जान को तो खतरा है, लेकिन किसी को तो जोखिम उठानी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि वास्तव चेहरे क्या है। मेरा एक एफिडेविट देने का और आगे आने का एक कारण बहुत बड़ा यह है कि संगठन को, कार्यकर्ताओं का और भारतीय संस्कृति का इस्तेमाल करके संघ, विश्व हिंदू परिषद, बजरंग दल में और भाजपा में बैठे कुछ लोग देश के साथ गद्दारी कर रहे, समाज के साथ गद्दारी कर रहे। मतलब 40-50 करोड़ जो हिंदू फॉलोअर्स है इनको गुमराह किया जा रहा है, हिंदुत्व का विकृत चेहरा दिखाया जा रहा है, और मुसलमानों से द्वेष करना यही हिंदुत्व है, और वास्तव में हिंदुत्व क्या है उसको छिपाया जा रहा है।
He's saying that of course he has threat to his life, but he says somebody has to take some initiative, because he's genuinely feeling that the RSS, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and a few members of BJP are completely misleading the Hindu society. This is not Hindu culture. I mean, it is not part of Hindu culture to hate Muslims. But they are misusing Hindu culture to mislead the entire Hindu community against Muslim. And this is a treason against the nation. This is treason against the society.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yashwant ji. Thank you, Takle. I'll
Thank you so much.
Back to Safa Ahmed. Safa, do you want to go
Yes.
ahead?
Thank you so much to both Mr. Takle and Mr. Shinde. Mr. Shinde, to you especially, we thank you for being here today and for having the courage to expose the RSS for its terror activities. So, dhanyavad. We now have time for our brief. We now have time for our brief Q&A session with our audience. As I mentioned, you can drop your questions in the chat box. We'll do our best to cover as many relevant ones as we can. There's one question for you, Mr. Takle. Have you written any recent comprehensive account of the cases as you just narrated, with dates, evidence, current status, etc.? If so, you can drop the link if you can.
Sure. I will do that. I have a number of such articles, my own articles, which I have written in the past about such Malegao blast terror activities conducted. And I'll definitely post the links of those articles.
Okay.
Also about the articles which Mr. Yashwant Shinde has mentioned.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have one question for Mr. Shinde, and perhaps one of you can translate. What do you hope that Hindu society will take away from this affidavit and the case that will come from it?
यशवंतजी, एक प्रश्न तुमच्यासाठी आहे की तुम्ही हे जे affidavit दिलेलं आहे आणि तुम्ही जी साक्ष देण्यासाठी म्हणून मागणी केलेली आहे, साक्षीदार बनवण्यासाठी म्हणून, तर याला हिंदू समाज भारतामधला सध्याचा हा कसं स्वीकारेल, कशा दृष्टीने त्याकडे बघेल?
हिंदू समाज किंवा तो हिंदू मतदार जो फॉलोअर्स आहे आज भाजप संघ परिवारचा, उन्होंने आत्मचिंतन करने की जरूरत है, ताकि ये जो मीडिया को हाथ में पकड़ के, सत्ता शासकीय यंत्रणों को हाथ में पकड़ के जो काम कर रहे हैं वो हिंदुत्व है नहीं। इनके असली चेहरे ये है जो घर का आदमी बता सकता है कि क्या हो रहा है, ताकि सिर्फ द्वेष फैलाना, मुसलमानों के खिलाफ द्वेष फैलाना और इसके आड़ में देश की संपत्ति को बेचना, ये और गलत विदेशों में भी हिंदुत्व की, हिंदू संस्कृति को बदनाम करने का काम नरेंद्र मोदी के हाथों हो रहा है। और मोहन भागवत जैसा व्यक्ति चुप बैठ रहा है, इंद्रजीत जी चुप बैठे हुए। इन्होंने राष्ट्रीय मुस्लिम मंच की स्थापना की है, तो इनका दायित्व है कि मुस्लिम हिंदू में जो खाई हो, खाई को कम करो, मिटाओ। लेकिन वे खुद चाहते हैं कि भाई ये माहौल ऐसा ही खराब हो।
He's saying that it is the right time for the Hindu community to introspect, because he's one who belongs to the same RSS family, and he says that it is only the family man who can tell and who can enlighten people about what is really happening in the family. And he says that the entire ruling dispensation under Narendra Modi is misusing people, is misusing Hindutva, and Hindutva is not hating, Hinduism is not hating Muslims, but they are only spreading and creating fear across India and now across the world. He also mentions that under the leadership of Narendra Modi, these right-wing Hindu organizations working in the United States and abroad, elsewhere, are only creating hatred and spreading fear about the other communities. And that is not essentially what Hinduism is.
Thank you for that answer. There's one more. We have limited time, so I'm going to try and combine some questions. But there's one question on what is the solution going forward? What can both diaspora Indians overseas do to bring awareness to this issue and dispel misinformation, as well as to convince this large segment of Hindus that blindly following the RSS is essentially what the real anti-nationalism is? I think Niranjan ji, I think you might be able to address the diaspora aspect.
Should I ask this question to Yashwant ji?
Either works. You could answer part of it maybe and then pose to him.
So what I genuinely feel is that what Yashwant Shinde ji also said, that Hinduism is not spreading hatred. Hinduism does not mean opposing Muslims. Hinduism does not mean to create and spread hatred against Muslims. But that is right now what is happening. And the right way to approach is that it is extremely essential to convince the majority of the Hindu community what Hinduism essentially is and what is the difference between Hindutva and Hinduism. Hindutva is essentially a political doctrine based on hatred. Hinduism is a way of worship, or a way of life. So these are two entirely different things, and through such interactions, the masses, the majority of the Hindu community needs to be enlightened more about the difference between the the political doctrine of Hindutva and the religious practices that essentially Hinduism talks about, which is all inclusive. So that's what I feel. I'll ask part of the question to Yashwant ji. यशवंत जी, एक प्रश्न आहे आणि तो असा है कि आपल्याला आप क्या सोचते हो कि किस तरह से ये जो गलतफहमी और ये जो नफरत द्वेष फैलाया जा रहा है, इसको किस तरह से कम कर सकेंगे, इसको किस तरह से मिटा सकेंगे, इस नफरत को?
इस नफरत को अगर कम करना है, समाप्त करना है, तो विश्वास का वातावरण निर्माण करना पड़ेगा। और उसके लिए छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज, इनका स्वराज्य, यही स्वराज्य आप निर्माण करेंगे। छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज जी ने जो निर्माण किया था, घर के और बाहर को न्याय समान हो। न्याय में भाषा, प्रांत, धर्म के आधार पर न्याय नहीं, अपराधी के नाते न्याय हो, और न्याय कड़ा हो, घर वाले को भी, बाहर वाले को भी। और न्याय गलत देने से ही द्वेष फैलता है, जो आज हो रहा है। इसलिए छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज जिन्होंने स्वराज्य स्थापित किया था, वो स्वराज्य आना चाहिए। स्वराज्य नहीं, स्वराज्य तो है, स्वराज्य नहीं है।
जी जी जी. He is making a very, very important point, and I mean, let me tell this. He says that to end this hatred, the atmosphere of hatred, it is extremely essential to create trust, and that trust can be created if there is equality before law in front of, for everybody, equality for majority, inequality for minority community before the law. And he gives an example of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, who belonged to Maharashtra, and he says that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj had made it, had ensured that there will be justice, equal justice for all, and nobody will be discriminated on the lines of religion, caste, creed, or social or financial status. So giving right kind of correct justice is the only way of creating trust, and which is not happening right now. People are getting discriminated on the lines of religion, and this should stop to create trust.
I have a question, Safa, if you allow me.
Go ahead.
यशवंत जी, एक सवाल ये है, आप तो आरएसएस में जो ग्रास रूट्स है, उनसे आप बहुत ही लंबे समय से आप जुड़े हुए हैं। आपको क्या लगता है कि आरएसएस के जो समर्थक हैं, जो सपोर्टर्स हैं, उनमें से कितने लोग ये सपोर्ट करते हैं कि हाँ, हमें मुसलमानों के विरुद्ध हिंसा करनी है, और कितने लोग इसका विरोध करते हैं कि हमें मुसलमानों की तरफ हिंसा नहीं करनी है?
वास्तव में हिंसा करने के लिए हिंदू समाज है ही नहीं, उसका चेहरा नहीं ना, उनका कल्चर है। अगर हिंसा हिंदू समाज में होती तो देश की सीमाएं सिकुड़ नहीं जाती, हजारों सालों में बढ़ जाती। संघ के दायरे में जो भी हिंदू समाज है या कार्यकर्ता है वो इसी मानसिकता के है नहीं, लेकिन उसके ऊपर वो लगातार ऐसा प्रचार किया जाता है कि और मुस्लिम द्वेष बढ़ाया जाता है और मुसलमान को ही टारगेट किया जाता है, ऐसा उनको ना होते हुए भी उकसाया जाता है।
So what Yashwant is saying is that it is not the culture or the faith among Hindu people and the Hindu religion to indulge in violence, but there is but the entire effort of the RSS is to create enmity and hatred for the Muslims and basically influence the Hindu people into thinking that the Muslim is the enemy and therefore violence is the way forward. Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you so much for that question. Thank you for the answer. I think this is about the amount of time we have today. I will pose one more question. What is the danger of bringing this to attention? What, as the RSS is a very powerful and, as we've seen, a very violent group. This is for Mr. Shinde. What is the danger associated with bringing this to light?
शिंदे जी सवाल ये है कि अभी तो सबको मालूम है कि संघ बहुत ताकतवान है, बहुत शक्तिमान बन चुका है, तो ऐसी सूरत में इतना बड़ा सच लोगों के सामने लाने का क्या खतरा क्या है? इससे आपको या ऐसी बातों को किस किस्म का खतरा है?
कौन सी बातों को?
जो सच आप लोगों के सामने ला रहे हो, उस सच को लोगों के सामने लाने की वजह से क्या खतरा हो सकता है? क्योंकि संघ तो आज बहुत ताकतवर बन चुका है।
वास्तव में संघ ताकतवर है नहीं, संघ कमजोर बन गया है, ताकतवर भाजपा बन गया है। और संघ के जितने भी शाखा है, पूरी सिस्टम, पूरी विश्व हिंदू परिषद, बजरंग दल, राष्ट्रीय सेवक समिति, अखिल भारतीय विद्यार्थी परिषद, भारतीय मजदूर संघ, चुनाव आते ही भाजपा को जिताने के लिए काम में लग जाते हैं। तो ये सारे कमजोर संगठन बने हुए, इनमें भी जान है नहीं, चुनाव आते ही इनमें जान आ जाती है। और भाजपा इस समय बहुत पावरफुल है, सक्षम है हर रूप से। तो ये जो विषय लाने के बाद में जो इनके असली चेहरे, जो क्रिमिनल माइंड के लोग हैं, जो देश के लिए नुकसान है, तो इन लोग और संगठन के लिए भी नुकसान के है। मेरा काम संगठन को, मैं आज भी संघ का स्वयंसेवक हूँ और संघ की शुद्धिकरण चाहता हूँ कि गलत लोग बाहर निकले। कुछ लोग है संघ विश्व हिंदू परिषद तो है नहीं, तो ऐसे लोगों पर कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। तो मैं जोखिम उठाकर एक काम कर रहा हूँ, तो बात सच है, परंतु मेरा स्पष्ट मानना है, घर में रहकर घर में मरने से अच्छा है मैदान में लड़के मरो, ये मेरा कहना है।
He's saying that it's very remarkable that of course there is threat and there is threat to life, but instead of dying inside the house, it's better to fight out and die on the battlefield. Secondly, he's saying that the RSS has not become powerful. In fact, on the contrary, he feels that RSS and other organizations like VHP and other organizations have weakened in front of BJP, and they have practically become slaves of whatever the BJP demands from them. Whenever it's the election time, they make all these organizations to work for BJP, to campaign for BJP, to fund for BJP. But otherwise, the existence of these organizations as an independent organizations has almost come to cease to exist. And that's why he feels that he still feels that he is a RSS volunteer, but he wants to purify the organization. Such bad elements which are misusing the entire organization and the community should be thrown out, should be prosecuted, and that's the only way he feels. That's the forward. But he again says that I will die by fighting them on the battlefield.
Very powerful answer. Thank you so much, Mr. Shinde, for your courage in speaking out. for taking the time to share your experience here today. We applaud the fact that you're risking your life to expose the RSS, and we hope for your continued safety. To Mr. Takle, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your thoughts and your expertise, and as well as for all the work you're continuing to do all the time, honestly.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for joining. Oh, wait, I can't forget. Thank you so much, Mr. Sahi, for translating. Thank you to your audience for joining us. This briefing was co-sponsored by Genocide Watch, World Without Genocide, Indian American Muslim Council, Hindus for Human Rights, International Christian Concern, Jubilee Campaign, 21 Wilberforce, Dalit Solidarity Forum, the New York State Council of Churches, Federation of Indian American Christian Organizations of North America, India Civil Watch International, International Commission for Dalit Rights, Center for Pluralism, American Muslim Institution, Students Against Hindutva Ideology, International Society for Peace and Justice, the Humanism Project, and Association of Indian Muslims of America. This recording and other resources can be found on our YouTube channel as well as our Twitter page. Please go ahead and check those out later. If you'd like to share, please do go ahead. And we wish you all the best. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Yashwant ji.